Welcome back, everybody, to Niners Now, and thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this video. I'm your host, Brady Grustas, at Grustas Brady on X. You can follow me there. And the longest tenured coach in the NFL is out. Mike Tomlin has stepped down as Steelers head coach. We're going to talk about what this means, not just for the 49ers, but for the entire league today. And of course, stick around until later in the show because I'll be going over the yearly NFL coaching carousel. It is a particularly crazy year for the coaching cycle, and we're going to break down all the openings and my predictions for what's going to happen. But before we begin, go ahead and subscribe down below. The support has been amazing so far, so please leave a like, leave a comment. Once again, huge shout out to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this video, and let's get into it. So like I just mentioned, Mike Tomlin stepping down as Steelers head coach. Notably, he was not fired. This was Tomlin's decision. He's stepping down after 19 years as the head coach of the Steelers. And in those 19 years, 0 losing seasons. Absolutely insane. An insane model of consistency. No matter the injuries, no matter the amount of talent, Mike Tomlin just pumped out winning seasons like it was nothing. However, he hasn't won a playoff game since 2016, since the peak of the Ben Roethlisberger era. And it's fair to wonder if the ceiling for Mike Tomlin's teams in Pittsburgh is capped, right? It might be capped at that wild card appearance, wild card loss type of situation like we just saw this year. 10-7, Aaron Rodgers, team goes out there and loses to a Houston team that didn't show their best effort, I would say. That was not the best version of the Houston Texans, and yet Steelers just couldn't hang. So does Tomlin take a year off? That's certainly what it seems like. It doesn't seem like he's looking to jump right back into coaching because the Steelers are retaining his rights. This might be a Sean Payton situation. If you remember, Sean Payton stepped down, or I think unofficially retired, as the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, where he spent many years. Spent a year off, was just kind of watching the league, observing, and then when he decided to come back, the Saints traded him to the Denver Broncos, where he is now. And we could certainly see something similar for Mike Tomlin. Obviously, he wasn't fired. Steelers still retain his rights. And if Mike Tomlin decides he wants to continue coaching after next year, he's going to have a market. His ability to raise the floor of a team is unprecedented. I mean, just look at what he did with the Steelers teams of the past 5 years or so, right? Steelers may absolutely trade Mike Tomlin once he comes back. That'll be a discussion for next offseason, though. The Steelers will now be looking for their 4th head coach since the 1960s. Just unfathomable consistency and structure for the Steelers organization. Mike Tomlin, obviously there for 20 years. Bill Cowher was there forever. Chuck Noll was there forever. The Steelers, when they find a new head coach, they really hit, and they will have to hit once again this offseason. I think that'll be one of the biggest storylines, in all honesty. The Steelers have maybe the best record of head coaching hits ever, just because of the amount of consistency and how long they've been able to stick by their head coaches. And now they're looking for another one. We'll talk later about who I think that next candidate will be. But as Tomlin leaves, the 2 longest tenured coaches in the NFL, Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh, from the same division, fired within a month of each other. It is truly a new era in the NFL. I guess Tomlin wasn't fired. He stepped down. But now neither Tomlin or Harbaugh will be in the AFC North next season. It's going to look a lot different up there in the North. And now Andy Reid, I believe, takes the mantle for longest tenured coach in the NFL. And then behind him, 3 guys hired in 2017. Sean McDermott in Buffalo, Sean McVay in Los Angeles, and none other than Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. Feels like only yesterday that Shanahan was brought in, but now he's one of the longest tenured coaches in the NFL. And if I'm the 49ers, I'm trying to keep him around forever. Now, let's get into the available jobs, because there are now, with this Steelers news, 9 NFL head coaching jobs available. and they're all making interviews and stuff. Haven't heard any official news about Steelers interviews because this Mike Tomlin stuff just came out on Tuesday, which is the day I'm recording this video. So we'll see what they think about their interviews and who they're targeting. I've already seen one rumor, maybe about Chris Shula, the defensive coordinator from the Rams. But first, let's take a look at the jobs that are available, and then we'll take a look at some of the top candidates available before I make my predictions. Available jobs. First up, Arizona Cardinals moved on from Jonathan Gannon this offseason. Very sad for fans of the NFC West. Cardinals have been a punching bag the last couple of years, and they probably will be next year too. The Cardinals, not a great head coaching position, I would say, considering they are in a brutal division. Maybe the best division in the history of the NFL. You could at least argue it. Niners, Seahawks, Rams, all insanely good coaching staffs, tons of talent on the roster, so much grit and just ability to win close games. And if you're the Cardinals, you got to play those guys 6 times a year as a rookie head coach. You've got a question mark at quarterback with Kyler Murray. Who knows if he's really the guy? Poor defensive personnel because even their good players are hurt all the time. There's just no identity for this team at all. This is a long-term rebuild, and it will be a challenge for whoever the Cardinals decide to hire. Also, the Atlanta Falcons fired Raheem Morris, and they're looking for a new coach. No viable quarterback on the roster, man. Michael Penix has no cartilage in his knee, and then his backup, Kirk Cousins, costs $40 million, and he's almost 40 years old. It is not a good outlook on offense. Not a good outlook at quarterback, right? You've got a really young, exciting defense with some talented players, Jalen Walker, Xavier Watts, James Pierce, fun players, right? Offense, you've got Bijan Robinson, you've got Drake London, you've got the Stars, and this division's winnable. Carolina won this division, limping into the playoffs. Buccaneers look like they're on the downturn. Saints, looking all right with Tyler Shuck. We'll see how they do. But Falcons certainly have the opportunity to win this division despite not having their first-round pick. You could also come in with a new general manager if you're going to the Falcons. So, some pros, some cons there for Atlanta. The Ravens, I think, are the best job available. They obviously moved on from John Harbaugh after not making the playoffs. You've got Lamar Jackson there, Derrick Henry, Kyle Hamilton. The division is wide open. As we saw, Steelers fired their head coach, Browns fired their head coach, Bengals coming off a really down year. Ravens could absolutely take this division if they nail the head coaching hire. And I don't know any head coach in the league who would not want to coach for the Ravens. Getting the fact that there is a head coach opportunity attached to the team that Lamar Jackson plays for is unfathomable. Having a quarterback that good and not a head coach, it's unreal. It's unreal. And whoever gets hired for that Ravens team is going to be very lucky to work with Lamar. Now, in that division, Cleveland Browns, major quarterback question marks, not like the Ravens, not whatsoever. But you've got an elite defense, and you may be able to retain Jim Schwartz, who's been the defensive coordinator there for quite some time. He is getting an interview for head coach in Cleveland, but I think they'd rather keep him on at DC and bring in somebody else. Now, the Raiders also have an opening. A lot of Max Crosby questions. Will he get traded? Can you fix Geno Smith? I don't know. Tough division, 2 playoff teams, and then the third team who didn't make the playoffs? Oh yeah, they have Patrick Mahomes. But the one selling point for the Raiders is that number 1 pick. Having the, top pick in the draft, presumably going to be Fernando Mendoza, that's a big deal. Mendoza's a talented guy, and I think you could make some noise if you nail that pick and nail that head coaching hire. The Miami Dolphins, I talked about them as a potential location for Josh Williams in last video. I didn't realize the Dolphins have hired their general manager already. It's John Eric Sullivan from the Green Bay Packers. So that's your GM. If you like Mr. Sullivan, then maybe you could work well with him in Miami. Dolphins need a new quarterback. They need to tear down the roster. I think this is going to be a multi-year rebuild for sure. So if you're going there, you'll probably get a pretty decent length contract, but it might be tough early. New York Giants looking for a head coach after firing Brian Daboll midseason. Jackson Dart and Cam Scadaboo are pretty enticing, and this defense has talent too. You got Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, Javon Holland. Definitely potential for a 1-year turnaround, right? Eagles are floundering. Just let go Kevin Patullo at offensive coordinator. Cowboys, they're still trying to work their defense out. Washington Commanders just had a real bad year with injuries. So Giants could potentially make some noise in the NFC East if they bring in a really good coach. Pittsburgh Steelers, we just talked about. This team's got a playoff caliber roster, but a 40-year-old quarterback named Aaron Rodgers. And nobody knows if Rodgers is going to stick around, keep playing. What's going to be the deal there? You got to find a future at quarterback. You got to get younger as a whole. But you could win some games early, like Mike Tomlin did. And then the last opening, Tennessee Titans. You've got the quarterback, right? Former number 1 overall pick, Cam Ward. He looks like the guy. But you don't have much else. You're going to have to get a lot of talent into this building. And in the meantime, win despite talent deficiencies. So those are our job openings. You've got Cardinals, Falcons, Ravens, Browns, Raiders, Dolphins, Giants, Steelers, Titans. Almost over a quarter of the NFL is looking for a new head coach. And after a quick word from our sponsor, we'll get into some of the top candidates next. Just some quick words here from Underdog. Football playoffs are here, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all the gridiron action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick if your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, rushing yards, receptions, and more. Get them right, and you could win up to 5,000 times your cash. This week on Underdog, I'm obviously looking at the 49ers Seahawks matchup, and I'm going to pick Jackson Smith and Jigba for higher than 91.5 receiving yards, and Brock Purdy for higher than 0.5 interceptions. So what are you waiting for? Download the app today and use promo code FOOTBALLFAN to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code FOOTBALLFAN. Underdog, make picks, win money. Now let's go over some of the top candidates. Who is going to get hired, right? We've got all these openings. Who's going to fill them? I think I'm going to start with Jesse Minter, the Chargers defensive coordinator. Minter has 7 interviews lined up. We'll see if he interviews with the Steelers or not, but 7 out of the 8 potential teams available. The only team who had an opening that hasn't interviewed him was Atlanta, and then the Steelers. We'll see if the Steelers decide to hire him. But 7 out of 9 interviews, that's a ton of interest, more than anyone else in this cycle, and I certainly think that Minter gets hired. Really bright defensive mind. Robert Saleh from the 49ers, we've been talking about it all year, has done an unbelievable job with this incredibly banged up unit. He's got 5 interviews under his belt. He's been a head coach before, and we'll see if he gets another head coaching gig this year. Clint Kubiak, Seahawks offensive coordinator, was the hottest name on the market early on this season. Has sort of cooled off as the year's gone along, but he's got 6 interviews lined up out of the 9 teams. So we'll see if Kubiak gets a job. I think he certainly will. I think, in my opinion, the best coach available is John Harbaugh. The Ravens head coach was let go by the Ravens. Seemed to be mutual. Not quite sure about that. There's been mixed reporting. John Harbaugh's got 3 interviews with the Dolphins, Browns, and Falcons, but he's unofficially met with the New York Giants owner John Mara's brother. Those two were spotted together. So very interesting. We'll see if John Harbaugh is connected to the Giants. There's been a lot of rumors and a lot of buzz around him with some different teams. I think Harbaugh is probably the first domino to fall in this coaching cycle. Seems like a lot of teams want his services. And then another guy I want to highlight, Kevin Stefanski, former Browns head coach, 2-time coach of the year. He's got 6 interviews lined up with the Titans, the Falcons, the Raiders, the Ravens, the Dolphins, and the Giants. So those are our top candidates. We've got a bunch of available jobs. Now it's time to play matchmaker. I'm going to give you guys my predictions for the 2026 coaching carousel. And like I said, I think it all starts with John Harbaugh or maybe the Ravens, right? We'll see what order it happens, but I think the Ravens are clearly the top job available, and Harbaugh is clearly the best candidate available. Obviously, Harbaugh is not going to go to the Ravens because they just fired him, but those two are the big dominoes to fall. So I'm going to start with those, and let's start with Harbaugh. My prediction, my gut feeling, and this is not insider reporting, right? I don't have any sources on the matter, but this is kind of where my gut is right now. I think John Harbaugh will be hired by the New York Giants. I think they've got potential for a last to first season. John Harbaugh has been a coach for a long time, might not want to go through a rebuild. The Giants need structure, right? They've been one of the worst ran organizations in the league the past 10 years or so. And what can Harbaugh do? He can bring structure. He can raise the floor of this team. That's what he does best. And Harbaugh gets one of the more talented rosters available to keep building up and try and make some noise early. I think, the Giants, not as talented as the Ravens, probably not as talented as the Steelers, but I'd put the Giants roster up against any of the other teams. Raiders, Cardinals, Falcons, Dolphins, Browns. Giants are a pretty well-rounded roster in all honesty. It's not perfect, but I think John Harbaugh to the Giants is a pretty interesting match, right? I think that works. That really fits in my head. Now, Harbaugh's been hired. Let's talk about the Ravens. I think the Ravens bring in Kevin Stefanski. I think the best job on the market goes to the second best coach on the market. I've got Stefanski number 2 right behind Harbaugh. If I were hiring, those would be my top 2 guys that I'm looking at. And it just makes sense, right? Stefanski, like we mentioned, 2-time coach of the year. Plenty of familiarity with the AFC North. Just spent most of his career with the Cleveland Browns. Ravens pretty familiar with Stefanski and his teams, and I think they'd be willing to bring him in. Stefanski is a play caller. He calls offensive plays. Pretty smart-minded guy, and I think he'd certainly be a play calling upgrade over, Todd Monken. That was his name. I was trying to remember. I think Kevin Stefanski would be a play calling upgrade over Todd Monken in Baltimore, and hopefully that gets Lamar Jackson back on track because he had a very, very miserable year. We'll see if Stefanski can fix him and get the Ravens back in the playoffs. Now, next up, let's go to Clint Kubiak. I think Clint Kubiak ends up with the Raiders. I think that sort of Seahawks to Raiders pipeline keeps on going. Kubiak never worked with Pete Carroll, never worked with Geno Smith, but I do see him joining the Raiders. I think it comes down to the Raiders and the Falcons for Kubiak, and I just think that draw of the number 1 pick, it's a big deal. I think Kubiak working with Fernando Mendoza is a lot more enticing than whatever you've got with Michael Penix Jr. Kubiak obviously has interviewed with the Raiders, and of course Stefanski's interviewed with the Ravens as well. And like I mentioned, Harbaugh did not interview with the Giants, but he had the meeting with the owner's brother, and there's reported interest. So Harbaugh is actually the one name on this list who hasn't interviewed for the team that I matched them with. I tried to stay rigid and tried to stay attached to teams who have reported interest. So Harbaugh to the Giants, Stefanski to the Ravens, Kubiak to the Raiders. Now let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Robert Saleh will be the next Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. And that breaks my heart to say, but I'm pretty sure it'll happen. It's coming. I think it'll come down to Robert Saleh or Chris Shula. There's a lot of reported interest with Chris Shula, but I just think that Saleh is a perfect fit. There's no official interviews yet out of the Pittsburgh camp, so we'll see if they even interview Saleh, but I have to imagine they will. He's a former head coach. He's got the experience. He's got toughness. He brings grit and resiliency. He's defensive-minded. All of the things that you think about when you think Pittsburgh Steelers, that's what Robert Saleh can bring. He will bring back the identity of this team. And also, as a bonus, he's heavily connected to the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, right? So if you want a young, bright offensive mind from one of these systems, Robert Saleh has probably worked with that guy, right? Whether it's Mike McDaniel or, Clay Kubiak or who knows, right? Somebody from the Rams. Like, Robert Saleh is connected to all of these guys. And maybe if you bring in Saleh and you bring in this sort of Shanahan offense, maybe you also bring in Mac Jones if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers to replace Aaron Rodgers. Because I can't imagine that you hire Saleh knowing that Rodgers is going to be your quarterback. Those two, I don't think, got along super well in New York. Now let's talk about Jesse Minter. He's got the most interviews of anyone this cycle, but I haven't given him a team yet. I'm going to give him the Arizona Cardinals. I think that teams may opt for more experienced coaches over Jesse Minter, who's never been a head coach before. Robert Saleh's been a head coach. Kevin Stefanski's been a head coach. John Harbaugh's been a head coach, right? Jesse Minter never has. So I think that he might kind of fall through the cracks a little bit and end up with kind of a non-desirable job in Arizona. The Cardinals, on the other hand, should be elated by this. The fact that they get Jesse Minter, that would not happen in a normal cycle, I don't think. But they get him here. And, Cardinals, looking over at the Seattle Seahawks, they saw how Mike Macdonald, this sort of wonderkind defensive coach from sort of the Ravens, Michigan, Harbaugh tree, he worked out great for Seattle. And he's been able to shut down the McVay and Shanahan offenses and get some major wins this season. So Cardinals go back to the well, right? They're like, we have to play the Rams and the 49ers and the Seahawks, right? We might as well go get a guy from that same tree. And I don't think there's a better one available than Jesse Minter. Now, let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons. Names are starting to fly off the board really quick. Falcons miss out on Clint Kubiak. Falcons miss out on Kevin Stefanski. But I think they land Mike McDaniel, former Dolphins head coach, one of the best offensive play callers available, maybe the best play caller available. He lands somewhere in desperate need of offense, right? You don't really have a quarterback, but if you can unlock Bijan Robinson with Mike McDaniel's run game prowess, and you can get Drake London involved, I think you can certainly win the NFC South. This would be a really fun hire, not only for Mike McDaniel, who gets a lot of toys to play with, but for Atlanta, who gets a significantly more exciting team. Now, with the Miami Dolphins, this one's kind of out of left field. I'm going to go with Jeff Hafley, the Packers defensive coordinator. This feels like kind of a lock to me. As soon as they hired the Packers general manager, I think, well, they're either going after Matt LaFleur or they're going after Jeff Hafley. Matt LaFleur, obviously not available, has not been let go by the Green Bay Packers, so I think it'll be Hafley. The Dolphins changed their identity from offense-focused to defense-focused. They bring in Hafley, who's a pretty bright young coach. His unit was great with Micah Parsons this year. Really fell off as the year went along after Micah Parsons got injured. But with the talent, Hafley did a great job. So we'll see what he can do in Miami. Now, one more team to talk about. It's the Cleveland Browns. I don't think the Browns are a very desirable job, and I don't think there's a ton of great options left. So what the Browns are going to do here is they are going to take a shot at a complete unknown. Grant Udinski, the Jaguars offensive coordinator, is going to be the Browns' next head coach. That's my prediction. Udinski is only 30 years old. He has been rapidly rising in the coaching ranks, and he's spent some time with elite offensive minds. He was, originally under Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, working with that passing offense. Then he was hired by Liam Cohen and the Jaguars to be their offensive coordinator. He's got these influences, right? You've got, of course, the Shanahan tree. You've got the Shanahan, the McVay, the Mike McDaniel, all those guys, right? But there's also sort of another coaching tree branching off from Sean McVay. You've got Kevin O'Connell. You've got Liam Cohen, right? You've got all these guys over on this side, too. And this is sort of where Grant Udinski comes from. I think the Browns take a shot, really smart guy, rising really quickly through the coaching ranks, and they say, you know what? We might not get anybody else. So let's get an offensive wonderkind, and let's try and make something fun happen with this miserable offense. So that's what I think. I think it'll be Grant Udinski to the Browns, Jeff Hafley to the Dolphins, Mike McDaniel to the Falcons, Jesse Minter to the Cardinals, Robert Saleh to the Steelers, Clint Kubiak to the Raiders, Kevin Stefanski to the Ravens, and John Harbaugh to the Giants. Those are my predictions. Notable candidates who did not get hired in my universe here: Chris Shula, DC of the Rams. Definitely will get interest, but I think he probably sticks with the Rams this cycle. If he goes anywhere, he'll probably go to Pittsburgh. But like I said, I just think Robert Saleh is such a perfect fit there. You've also got Mike McCarthy, who once again does not get hired, might have to spend another year off. Brian Flores doesn't get hired. He's got a lot of interviews lined up, but given that he's got an active lawsuit against the NFL, I don't know who would really be willing to hire him as a head coach. Pretty interesting. And then Raheem Morris. He's got some interviews too. I don't think he's a head coach this year. I think that's, he'll go back to being a DC, maybe with the 49ers if they lose Robert Saleh. So that is all for today, folks. Who do you think will be the first head coach hired? And what do you think of my head coach carousel predictions? Let me know down below in the comments. And of course, let me know if you enjoyed this episode. Leave a comment, leave a like, and let me know if there's any topics that you'd like to see me cover. Thank you all for watching, and subscribe for 49ers videos 5 days a week. I'm Brady Grustas, at Grustas Brady on X. This has been Niners Now, and I'll see you tomorrow.